Oh, okay, now we're recording. If I were just a little less high, this would be more helpful. But there's no way I'm going to post this, right? I can feel this future part of myself feeling obligated to have to post this in order for it to be real. Philosophy isn't done on YouTube. It's done in the journals of philosophy. And so there's this part of me that feels like I'm a sellout if I do this through YouTube. How gimmicky is it to take a weed gummy and then film yourself? Looking at a screen and talking to myself seems so egotistical. Ugh. If I literally make videos about talking to myself, that's gotta be doing something damaging to my psyche, right? The idea of like accessing this plane of existence, this perspective is only possible through taking weed feels weird, feels morally wrong. But see, now I feel like I'm performing. I guess the distinction here is I'm not trying to be cute. Like, I am trying to do something rigorous in the sense that I'm making myself vulnerable to the critique and the intimacy. I don't even have to keep recording. I can actually... Okay, so you come up with a problem. How many tons of carbon am I adding by uploading YouTube videos? So there's like 3-ish stages to this process. There's the research component, which is going to use energy from the laptop. I would say it's fairly minimal. There is the energy that I use to film and edit. So what I want to look at more specifically is once I have finished editing the video and I'm ready to upload it, how much energy does it take to upload a video to YouTube? How much energy does it take for YouTube to process that video? And that includes compressing the file size, encoding and encryption, and then also the storage of that video on YouTube's servers. And then the final component of all this would be determining how much greenhouse gas emissions are released when streaming the video. All of this is obviously going to be dependent on the length of the video and also the resolution, which is more or less gonna be indicated by the file size. So however large the file is that I'm creating out of Adobe Premiere and then uploading into YouTube. Yes, Hi Sam was correct in saying that there's no need to be recording this video in 4K when you're literally looking at my unshaven, raggy self. And then the other part of it is internet connection speeds and transmission speeds, bandwidth, I guess, and how much energy that's using to take the file from my computer and upload it onto YouTube's servers up in the cloud. When we talk about the cloud, it's a misleading term because it makes it seem as if all of this data is just not taking up space, when in fact that is not the case. A cloud is basically a computer server separate from wherever you're located. And I know I'm botching these terms. So if you consider my computer where I'm sitting here uploading as one server, when I upload to YouTube, I'm uploading it to quote unquote YouTube's cloud, but that's YouTube's server, databanks in a data center. I want to make the analogy that the cloud, we would better think of it as like a storage unit, like a physical storage unit, because instead of having to store the gigabytes of data on your local computer, you're storing it on essentially another computer. The physical space, in a sense, that the data is taking up, it's still taking up that space. It's just not on your computer. It's one of those ways that we talk about technology, which makes it seem more ethereal than it really is. So like basically, what is it costing for me to take my video from my computer and put it on YouTube server? Most of this information came from Greenly, which, as best as I can tell, seems to be a sustainability consultant group. Bear that in mind with the information presented and the numbers that they're calculating. If I want to store my data on YouTube servers, and I'm using YouTube in the specific, but this isn't specific to YouTube. Greenlee reports 0.1 kilowatt hours per year for 1 gigabyte of storage. They use the International Energy Agency's estimation of carbon emissions per kilowatt hour from the US in 2021, and they report 0.4419 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per kilowatt hour. So when you multiply that out, you're getting about 0.04 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per year for 1 gigabyte of storage in a data center. And why are these data centers so energy intensive? Better videos have talked about this, but in short, it's just 24 hours a day, constantly running and processing a lot of data, obviously. Based on a 2017 Stanford Magazine article, they report 1.81 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per year for 1 gigabyte of storage. So that's a pretty significant difference. Granted, there's a 5-year difference between these two measurements. There's maybe a refinement of the way the measurements were done. In essence, we have a range here of 0.04 to 1.81. I'm going to just say that with those two numbers given, let's round it to 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide equivalents per year for 1 gigabyte of storage, of data storage in an external server, in a quote unquote cloud server. Just know that that's probably higher, maybe even a lot higher than what it actually is. On this video that I'm working on, part of what I've recorded seems like it's going to be about 5 gigabytes. Granted, I recorded it in 4K. Let's say I'm going to half that 5 gig to 2.5 gig. So we're looking at 2.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per year for each video that I upload. That's not including the amount of energy it uses to upload, as far as I understand, to YouTube servers. That's just the energy cost of keeping it in a data center. I couldn't find a great source on the actual energy it takes to upload the video. It looks like maybe it's on the upper side of 5 grams of carbon dioxide equivalents per gigabyte, I think. When comparing to grams to kilograms, we're looking at a 1,000-fold difference. So I'm going to basically disregard the upload energy requirements. So now what I want to look at is the energy used to stream a video, because this was another area that had a pretty robust amount of research, at least based on a 3-hour-long internet research. So very rigorous. This information came from the International Energy Agency. So the important thing here is to remember that when you're streaming, the variable factors here are going to be how it is streamed and then where that electricity comes from. I'm going to ignore the second one since most of my viewers would probably be in the US and therefore would have a roughly similar source of electricity. And so then we're just going to look at how it is streamed. This is somewhat intuitive as well, in that if you're streaming on a phone, it's going to have a lower energy requirement than if you're streaming on a 4K TV. Even if it's not 4K on a 50-inch TV, and laptop would fall somewhere in the middle there. Not exactly in the middle. These are, again, just more to give you a perspective of where things are, not an absolute point. 1 hour of streaming on phone, high definition with high Wi-Fi, it shows an upwards of 31 grams of carbon dioxide equivalents. I think on the lower side, it was 10 grams. So anywhere from 10 grams to 31 grams of carbon dioxide equivalents per 1 hour of streaming on a phone at high definition under Wi-Fi. And this was reported to be roughly the same energy that's used when boiling a kettle of water. more for a reference point, not to make any sort of conclusions of whether this is good or bad. So keep in mind, we said 2.5, maybe upwards of 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per year to store my video on YouTube servers. Now, how much energy does the streaming of it consume? Well, this is obviously going to be dependent on the number of views that it gets, and not just, views in YouTube's terms, but the number of full views. If I make a 15-minute video, we're talking the full view of the 15 minutes. I took the higher number of the two, so 36 grams. Remember, that was for streaming for an hour, so I divided that by 4. So then we're looking at 9 grams of carbon dioxide equivalents per one full view of my video. So this could vary. I could get anywhere from 100 views to 1,000 to 100,000. I've never had 100,000 views. 9 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents for 100 full views, 90 if I got 1,000 full views, which is kind of the upper limit of my viewership at this point. And if I were lucky enough to get 100,000 views, then we'd be looking at 9,000 kilograms. So now we have 2 numbers. For my video to remain on YouTube's servers for a year, it's going to take about 2.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions, whereas the streaming of it, if I get 100 full views on that video, is going to be about 9. The whole point of this was to say that the streaming cost is what's going to be much higher. That's not to make a moral claim as to, oh, I'm okay to do this because my part of it is so much smaller than your part of it. It's important to remember that carbon emissions aren't the only important factor here. In terms of carbon emissions, storage was relatively lower than the streaming cost. That would probably not be the same for water use. We know data centers use a lot of water for cooling, and that's a significant problem, and one that's not quantified by carbon emissions. Yeah, there's something too about YouTube being weird. I mean, what was it? Mr. Beast, his rise to fame was sitting in a video and counting to like 1 million, or I'm gonna get so much hate for this. That is something about Mr. Beast that I admire. Wherever he has gone to since then, I don't know that the Mr. Beast who started that day knew that he was going to be successful. So he literally was just like, well, I'm gonna sit here and count to 1 million and post it to YouTube, and if it's not successful, no one will ever know. Shit, I always lose. The worm, doesn't quite come back into the brain. Or I guess I should say it goes out of the brain for a minute, and then I gotta rewire it. Reroute it. And why do I need to film it in 4K? Because YouTube likes that? Screw YouTube. I'll film it in 1080. But yeah, if I can get the stand thing working, I could just turn it on and off. Like right now,